Hey guys, welcome back to Reverse Sweep with me, MarkyB. I'm joined by Aches and Parasite to break down the Esports World Cup. So guys, what did you make of the event compared to the CDL majors?
I thought the event was awesome. It had a bunch of issues that were like tech side, but I'm going to go ahead and chalk that up to the game client just being not suitable for tournaments and them not using the CDL clients. As to why they didn't use the CDL client, I don't know. It could be a very different amount of things, like them not having a server out there, or them not being able to make accounts, or it just not being an official CDL event, and them having like the tech people and like the CDL like staff to run it. I don't know. But outside of tech issues, at least from what I know, and you'll talk about this a little bit more, but that event apparently was really awesome. Like the area that it was in, the venue, the treatment for the players, the PPAs, everything. A lot of people liked it. So yeah, I mean, it was a fun one. Finals wasn't a snooze, which is great. I mean, I love when these finals go damn near last map. It just creates a way more entertaining, intense environment, and that's what we kind of saw here. So overall, I'm pretty happy with the way the tournament panned out, and I had a blast watching it.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of tough, Mark, to say, right? Because like I feel like from a viewer perspective, we didn't really get the full picture of like what was happening in Saudi. Like, I'm sure you're going to go into detail, but like from the pictures that I've seen on Instagram or Twitter, like it seems like the event as a whole was much different than what we just saw on a stage, like much bigger, I guess. But as far as the games go, I think, yeah, the games were pretty good. I still, regardless of performance, I think every event should be a pro-am format. And I don't know if the CDL will ever adopt it fully. Like we had in, what was it, MW2, the first event, MW2, that was the pro-am. But yeah, I mean, games were good. Finals wasn't a snooze like Chris said. So overall, I think it was a good tournament.
Yeah, I think touching on quickly on the CDL client and stuff like that, I think that may be part of the like thing to do with the players not actually all being signed on CDL contracts and things like that, because I think that is part to play in terms of getting access to that. Obviously, with challengers teams being involved and whatnot, there could be a multitude of different reasons, but of course, I feel like that should be the general expectation going forward. If that could be worked around and figured out going forward, if we have any more of these events, different tech servers. We had a bunch of those lag issues. I think we were just basically playing essentially online on the Saudi servers from the event. So obviously that sense of things, it wasn't ideal, but to touch on the overall event experience itself, I think first of all, the country of Saudi Arabia is from what I've seen of Riyadh, etc., it's a completely different experience to anywhere I've ever been in my life. The hospitality and whatnot that we were shown at the hotel, at the venue, all those sort of things. It's going to feel a bit strange going back to like a traditional CDL event. I'd say one thing that was great is like you guys mentioned, the PPAs and all those sort of things. At CDL events, like a lot of you guys won't know this, but there's very much like it's not really even in terms of the PPAs and things. Like some teams will be sharing rooms with other teams, some teams will have massive rooms to themselves and all these sorts of things. So it's really not ideal. I think that this event itself, everyone was very much on like a level playing field, and I'd say that it was definitely the best experience in terms of being able to practice and prepare for the matches, having your own rooms with 2 coaches' PCs, the 4 for the players. Overall, it was just, from top to bottom, the hotel, we had like 3 courses a day, breakfast, lunch, dinner, like, all you can eat. All the players are eating good. At the event itself, there's like, you can get massages, there's multiple different players' lounges where there's like games and stuff to play. There was just so much to do for the players, and outside of the game itself, the experience was amazing. And honestly, I could sit here all day just rattling off the different things that you could do at the event. But overall, really positive things to say about the organisation of the Esports World Cup. But yeah,
how would you compare it, Mark? Because I think you went to a couple of them. The original Esports World Cup. Remember the ESWCs that were always in Paris? Like, how would you compare it to that? Because it's a totally different organization, totally different structure, but it uses the same name now.
Yeah, I'd say it's a lot different. You obviously had, I remember playing you in a finals of one of those, Pat, and I think we had like just dance on the main stage before us, and we're like warming up, and there's people dancing in front of us. I'd say this was like a lot more, of a professional esports event in comparison to that. That felt almost like a kind of gaming convention, So I'd say it was a little different. Obviously, with like ESL Face It running the event, it's very organized in terms of like, it's probably mentioned online. There was obviously one of the biggest issues that was brought up, I guess, was that there was no practice facilities at the venue itself. So you had to kind of get like shuttles to and from the hotel to the venue after your warm-up scrims and whatnot. So it meant that teams had like big breaks in between warming up to when they were actually playing on stage. I'd say that the organization, though, of like, getting the players from A to B and all those sort of things was like amazing. The players lounge area at the venue itself was like in a different building to the main stage. So there was like golf buggies that took you from the players lounge to the main stage. You would have saw those shots before some of the matches where you see the people kind of walking into the room. And that was like coming off the golf buggy into the venue. So, I mean, I'd say it was completely different to those events, to be honest. But yeah, it was insane. Like I said, I think it's going to be completely different going back to some of these events where you're staying in, Arlington, for example, where it's like, a very much a different experience. I mean, don't get me wrong, I love the esports arena, the venue itself, but the place of Arlington I'm not a huge fan of. But yeah, let's go into the event itself, guys, and let's get into the crux of it and go straight into the grand finals. And what do you guys think this W means for FaZe's season overall?
I think it just makes it seem like they had a more successful season than they originally did if it was just champs. I feel like they would have been way more disappointed if the season just ended with champs, but for them to get like a potential redemption arc here by, being able to take this home. And although it's not a ring, it's still a massive amount of prize. And I think they're definitely like second in terms of prize winnings, but they feel like they probably made up a lot of they probably are second still in prize winnings, but they feel like they probably made up a lot of groundwork that they would have had or that they wouldn't have had because they got top 6 at champs. It also is just a nice way to cap out the season because a lot of people were calling this team saying they should make roster changes and certain players had issues at doing that. And for them finally being able to come out and win another tournament after having those like little second place tournaments and a top 6 at champs, like I feel like that really kind of aids them into like stomaching the pill that is the top 6 at champs a lot more than if they just didn't have this tournament. So great way to end for FaZe. Can't complain there.
I mean, if you add up their prize money from this event in champs, right, like it probably combines to what first at champs was. So to me, I think this was just a way for players that, to pad their pockets a little bit. But yeah, I think for me, this was the blocker to stop them from making a roster change, right? Like FaZe getting this win here was like maybe we are, not in a position where we think we're crumbling. It was nice to see them not crumble in a final, right? Like we've talked about that so many times on this show. Like what happens to FaZe in the final? Granted, it was against 100T, but at least they showed some.
Still was close. They almost went map 7.
Yeah, but I mean, at least they showed some resilience, right? And it wasn't like, this team just fell apart in the final. But yeah, I think it was the roster save of like it stopped those conversations that could have happened in the offseason of like, should FaZe move? Because I don't think after this performance that they're going to change. And I think it kind of just brought their season back from to their standards at least what was seen otherwise as an unsuccessful season. So
I think for me, I was worried going into that final where I thought it was going to be a repeat of Major 4 where obviously FaZe 3-0'd New York in round 1 and then go on and lose to them in the finals. And I was like, after LA Thieves or 100 Thieves at this event went up 2-1 in the series, I was like, there's no way they're going to crumble again. But obviously they showed that resilience, winning out that last round control, which on an attack on invasion is obviously very unlikely in a lot of situations. So, they clutched up, and I think that they were waiting to do that, and I think it's proved probably to them internally that they can do that. So I think I completely agree in the sense that they're probably now going to go ahead and stick, which makes things a little less interesting or a little more interesting in terms of like the roster discussions. But we can get into that further on in the show. But yeah, I think that, massive credit to FaZe. I think they definitely could have came away with some more wins throughout this season. I think we can all agree on that. But I want to talk a little bit about LAT and their like resurgence towards the end of the season, because obviously they got top 4 at champs and they looked really good towards the end once they got things together. First team that's non-top 4 to make a finals this season. So what do you think went right for them, guys?
I think they just had everybody playing so much better, but they also just kind of avoided the group of death, that the bracket of death, right? They ended up having the easiest road to the finals. It is what it is. You can't take that away from them. They played whoever was in front of them, but with New York, OpTic, and FaZe all on the one side of the bracket, all they really needed to do was get that Toronto upset win, and it almost felt like they were almost guaranteed finals with their past performances. Them being able to beat Toronto, though, was massive. They pretty much soft Neslo'd them, is what we'd like to call it, because they did beat them in 2 search and destroys, and they did end up winning one of the hard points. But that's been something that's always haunted Toronto, so I'm kind of not really mind blown that even happened, because Thieves have been a solid search team. But I wanted to commend the progress that this entire roster has made. When they put this together, we are always talking about Nastie and Kremp in specific, who were very inconsistent players and weren't ever really rising to the occasion. Kremp had a lot of stinker moments, and a couple, even one at champs, where he was dropping single-digit kills and just completely costing his team. But he had a pretty damn good tournament here. He had some big S&D performances. I think he dropped like 16 or something like that, or 15 against Toronto on the Karachi S&D to close it out. So he was a big reason why this team was even making it that far. But on top of that, Nastie, who was in conversation to make MVP, which is crazy that Nastie was in that consideration if they would have won. He stepped up at this tournament massively where they needed him, because Ghosty did not have the tournament that he usually does. Obviously, some people say that him not having what is it called? Papanya, as we like to call it, at the tournament, was not allowing him to play up to his performances, which is kind of funny, because I always feel like a lot of people, I don't know if you guys at home know this that are watching, but Dan does indeed smoke before his matches. So I think he does. It's not like he gets fucking high as hell or anything, but he definitely does enough to the point where I feel like it calms his anxiety, because as we know, that's a medical reason to be using it. And I feel like that probably helps him kind of keep his stress levels down and not really, get anxious when he plays. But him not having it here, you could see that it probably affected his performance a bit, because he just didn't have a tournament up to his standards. But they still ended up getting second, and they still ended up upsetting Toronto and cleanly taking the series 3-0 against Surge. So they played well, man. They've been making a lot of strides as players in the team. So I hope they stick, but obviously people are going to be coming for players like Joe, players like Ghosty. They just have been the clear stars of this team.
I don't know what more I could follow that up with, Mark, other than those guys were just shooting this weekend. They were shooting.
Yeah, I would say that, although I agree Dan did play worse, I guess, in a sense, I think that it could also be a factor of his teammates playing better in a lot of these situations. We've been going on about the Dan Ghosty show with this roster the entire time. If his teammates like Nastie are picking up more kills, we've always seen him doing pretty well in the damage stats, but if he's picking up more kills, Dan's, obviously going to get less in that sense. So I think that overall the entire team as a collective played a lot better. So maybe that's the move going forward. Maybe he needs to stick to what's working here. Maybe not. Maybe they'll play even better, when he's back in a legal place to consume his drug of choice. But anyway,
it's funny talking about it, because you're trying not to make it seem like he's a druggie.
Yeah,
it works. If it works, it works.
Yeah, and I think that a big storyline of this entire season has been the overall matchups and the top 4, and we saw again FaZe going up against OpTic, and they have their number again. Obviously, OpTic avoided that FaZe matchup at champs, and they went on and won it. This time they go up against FaZe, and it was, albeit the first map was an absolute crushing from OpTic, and they actually played the map twice. And I think if you combine the scores of the two maps, it was not pretty on the Karachi hardpoint. But ultimately, FaZe in those next 3 maps looked dominant, and OpTic looked like a much worse team. But I think that it just comes down to those matchups, and I think that's a very interesting topic of conversation that we need to have here. Is are we going to see this continue into next season, or is it very much a game by game basis?
I don't really know. They definitely had their number this year. It wasn't really close outside of, I think when did they beat them? Was it Major 3? I don't
so.
Was it the first event the OpTic won? I think they beat them and then they got sent to losers and then lost to Toronto and then Toronto made finals. I think that's what it was. But yeah, I don't know. It's kind of crazy how like FaZe is just so dominant against this team, but they just keep losing to Toronto. They dodged that bullet here because Toronto got eliminated by Thieves. It's crazy how that works. But yeah, I mean, FaZe is just, I feel like FaZe does a really good job of micromanaging like the Shotzzy, the Shotzzy level play, because he typically pops off against everybody else. But more often than not, I'm not saying that Shotzzy has not played well against FaZe, but more often than not, they're able to shut him down. So, yeah, they ended up running into him in the bracket. And outside of that first map, which I thought was going to be scary for FaZe, they ended up bouncing back and taking the next 3 very cleanly. So, yeah, they look good. As far as will it continue? Maybe, maybe not. It's a completely different game. I feel like all these teams that made changes outside of like Toronto have started to get better with their respective rosters. So maybe, maybe not.
What Chris failed to mention, Mark, was OpTic's supposed superstar just couldn't hang against the FaZe guys. He said they were playing to counter him. I think they did more than that. They had him on skates, Mark. They had him on skates. I think he had a 0.6. Yeah, he played good in the tournament up to that point, but FaZe had him on skates in that series. I think that's worth mentioning, especially for someone who's the champs MVP, right? But yeah, I mean, it just gets into this matchup conversation. I mean, there's a world you could probably say that Cloud9 could have potentially beat FaZe this weekend, right? Like, had they matched up. So these top 4 matchups are crazy, and I think it's only going to get crazier once these top 4 teams potentially improve in the offseason.
I have a quick question for you, Pat. If your 2025 Call of Duty League champions Ultra hadn't been upset by LA Thieves, and then they went on to beat Surge and they'd match up against FaZe in the finals, what would your prediction have been there in that hypothetical world?
4-0. 4-0 was a best of 7, right? So it was a 4-0. They would have smoked them. It was just like they did at Champs. Mark.
All right. Okay. All right. I like that. Yeah. I mean,
but I think the Ultra are going to improve, Mark. I think the Ultra are going to improve in the offseason, and they're going to be the 2025 world champions.
You all have been funny. You all have been funny if Toronto won this tournament and then Pat would be like, wait, what do you mean? I said they were going to be the 2024 World Cup champions. And I was right like the whole time.
I said 2025, Chris. You're mishearing.
Yeah, I think he did 2025. All right.
I think he predicted Ultra to win this event, to be honest. And
no, Mark, the one next year, the Esports World Cup next year, 2025.
Okay. All right.
Yeah,
so they're going to CDL champs and the Esports World Cup next year, right? Is that your prediction?
They're going back to back. Yeah.
Okay.
They will be the world champs next year, 2025. Yep.
Outside of all the top 4 teams, you've seen the Boston roster from who came out of Challengers, who obviously got picked up by Boston Breach, having a sort of stellar performance. We obviously saw sort of between champs and this event a lot of news regarding that organization. Like layoffs or whatever that may be within the company. I'm not entirely sure what's going on there. There's been a lot of different rumors here and there, but what's your thoughts on sort of that situation? And would you say any of those players on that roster deserve to remain in the league?
Here, Pat, you got me because I know you're probably going to say the same thing.
I don't know, Mark. I don't think the roster is bad, right? I think they're obviously a top challengers roster. I I mean, we talked about this before. I think Boston, obviously what they're going through is part of it, but I just think they need to relook at this entire team. Do they have pieces I think can work in the league? Yeah, I do. But I just don't think the roster they have currently is good enough. My personal opinion. I think the only reason they got out of groups was due to the pool they had. I think Chris, you're pretty agreed on that. Is they got out due to the pool, but yeah, I guess my long answer or my short answer here, Mark, is no. I don't think so.
I would argue that
I don't really know. Oh, good.
On you go, Chris.
Okay. I was going to say, I don't really know what this team is going to do with all their layoffs and what they're planning on even doing. They could pull LAG and just dip and then like have it fend for themselves and put together. They might just keep the same team at that point if that happens. Granted, this is probably the most successful Boston Breach have been, in the last like year and a half. So that's kind of crazy. But overall, I mean, they looked all right. I still think Snoopy's still a question mark for me as terms of what he can do in the league, because I just feel like he's super inconsistent. I feel like Purge actually played way better, off of like in terms of his own statistical performances off of that Vegas team on this roster. And I feel like Wake had a couple pop-off moments, and Cammy was not really doing the greatest, but he had a couple of good maps as well too. So when it comes down to it, I feel like all these guys definitely can be in the league. As far as where they could land, I'm not entirely sure. There's going to be a couple teams going through some sort of rebuilding phases, Boston included. So maybe they just stick it out if they can't really find anybody else that they can get. Honestly, I don't even know. I still don't even know what's going on in Boston because people are making rip rumors. Apparently that hasn't happened. They represented Boston at this tournament. What's even going on?
Yeah, I mean, obviously we don't know that, but in a hypothetical world and Boston remain in the league, I would argue that, outside of the teams in the CDL, the sort of bottom 6 teams, I think this team's a very good mesh together, to be honest. I do think, obviously, there could be improvements there, but if Boston are to remain in the league and there is this sort of, budget cuts and whatnot going on within the organisation, this is a very good budget roster to have, in my opinion. It's a good balance. You've got Wake being that slower paced AR player who's going to pick up kills, Cammy who can be that faster paced AR player, and then I think we've seen it here that Purge and Snoopy that can be a good SMG duo together, and I think that Purge and Snoopy themselves are both sort of playing off each other in a very good way. Snoopy being that hyper aggressive player, Purge being that gap filling type SMG player who has allowed Snoopy's performance to improve and Purge's too. I think they're a good mesh, and I would like to see them stick if they are going down a budget route. Don't get me wrong, if they had millions of dollars to spend, they could definitely make improvements in different areas. But I think it's a good roster to have, in my opinion. So I'd like to see them stick, but I guess that's a hypothetical. We'll have to wait and find out more news as that unfolds over the off-season. We've got a little quick fire round for you guys. And so we're going to go through the rosters. I mean, we want to find out from you, Pat, especially, and you, Chris, as well. Stick, twist, or blow it up on the CDL rosters, right? Let's quickly rattle through these. Right. OpTic. Are we sticking? Are we twisting?
Yeah, I think we stick.
We keep the OpTic roster? All right. And then we'll
if they wouldn't have won champs, though, I would have said they twisted around, but they won.
Did you not hear me? I said stick.
All right, okay. Got you. All right, what about Atlanta FaZe?
Stick.
Why are you questioning that? They just won.
I mean, because right before champs, I was saying the same shit, man. I think the only reason I want them to shake it up, to twist it up, is because I just want to see a world where this trio is on different teams somehow. That would be.
I don't even think them twisting up makes the top 4 more interesting. I think New York and Toronto making moves would make the top 4 more interesting. I think FaZe sticking and OpTic sticking, and then the other 2 improving makes the top 4 better.
Yeah, maybe. I think it would just be crazy to see them in other jerseys. Just saying.
Yeah. For me, I'm going with the controversial. I'm going twist for sure.
Oh my goodness!
Right, I'm going crazy with this one. Right, who am I dropping? I'm dropping. I'm getting scrap on the team for someone. That's what I'm doing. I'm finding some way somehow to get him on the roster.
But Cell just got MVP. Like, where do you put him on this team?
I don't know, man. He's the fifth man.
I like your thinking, but Cell just got MVP.
Scrap takes Drazah's spot on his own roster.
Yeah,
yes.
Insane.
Yeah. Let's do it. Let's go crazy with it. You know what I mean? Right, let's think. Honestly, I'm trying to think of the next roster I'll go with is LA Thieves. That's probably an interesting one considering they just came second and they've had a very good end to their season.
I'm twisting it.
Okay.
Twisting it.
What direction you going with the twist?
I'm keeping Joe. I'm keeping Ghosty. And I'm looking to improve both other spots.
I'm just thinking Stick, just because I don't really know who they would be able to get that can really benefit them. I feel like they've just improved as a team. They've got some momentum, and I feel like they're just improving as players. They're the youngest team easily, so they've worked on a lot of their stuff, and they've been looking good. So I don't know if they jeopardize that for potentially taking risks they don't need to.
The thing is, Cap's no longer coaching them, right? So they automatically improve a little bit.
I would stick with this squad personally. I think that their goal this season, from what they had said in the preseason, after they obviously let go of their previous roster, was building a foundation that maybe wouldn't have success initially, but building for the future. But they've had a very successful end of the year at the two biggest tournaments of the season. So for me, I think that they're in a good place. I would say that they should maybe look at getting like a potential substitute in that's like the next best player in certain positions, but not changing the initial four. Just having like plan Bs ready just in case this roster doesn't mesh as well on the next title. Right, next roster we'll move into, we'll go Toronto Ultra.
I'm twisted.
Blow it up.
Whoa, not blow it up.
Blow it up. I'm blowing it up simply just because.
How do you blow this up? You 100% keep Kleenex and Scrappy. So if you're keeping 50% of the
Scrappy,
team,
you're keeping Scrappy, and everything else might be interchangeable. I'm not going to lie.
You're delusional. Who are you getting that's better than Kleenex?
Kleenex has been inconsistent this entire year.
I agree. Name one player better.
It's the same thing that you could say for the other rosters when it comes to making changes.
No, it isn't.
Listen,
Kleenex had a bad game.
It depends on who's available. That's it.
No,
it depends on who's available.
This guy's delusional, bro. We're not.
I'm blowing it up if it's available.
Ultra.
If it's available, I'm getting. If it's available, I'm getting rid of Insight for sure.
Okay. No.
And I'm getting rid of one or the other between Kleenex or Envoy.
One. Name one player who could potentially be available that's better than Kleenex.
Yeah, you never know.
Name one in the whole. You could be hypothetical. The whole league.
I mean, like a hypothetical. What if like the Tiny Terrors blow up?
No. FaZe and OpTic are off the table. So name one.
Hydra.
Name one. Dude, he's off the table too.
What do you mean? Everyone's off the table then?
Be realistic, bro. You're not getting Hydra, Simp, or aBeZy, or Shotzzy, or
You never know how these rosters go, man.
Bro,
blow it up.
There's no hypothetical player that you can get to blow up the Toronto Ultra. You keep Scrappy and Kleenex are locked to this squad.
It's the same thing when he's talking about he was talking about getting Scrap on the roster. You think that's possible? You didn't say anything.
He wasn't talking about blowing up FaZe.
It's just Toronto. He loves them, bro.
He was talking about twisting. There's a difference between
twisting
and blowing it up.
I even commented, are you saying Pat? What am I saying? Oh,
no, I'm saying
Pat
on FaZe you wanted to
Pat
twist.
Just loves Toronto, so on FaZe he wanted to get Scrap on there. Let's be realistic. FaZe Scrap's off the table.
I didn't think that's happening. What I'm saying,
you didn't say anything.
I said FaZe should stick.
Yeah, buddy. Pipe down.
I said FaZe should stick.
I'm getting rid of one of the subs and one of the ARs if possible. If possible.
No wonder this guy is not a GM. He's trying to get rid of Kleenex.
I never said Kleenex. I never said Kleenex.
Yes, you did. Mark, is he backtracking?
I said that's a possibility.
Whoever is editing this right now,
Kleenex or Envoy.
We need to reclip what Chris said.
I said Kleenex or Envoy.
The backtrack. No, you said blow it up.
I said blow it up. Kleenex or Envoy. Kleenex or Envoy and get rid of Insight.
Blow it up means you're making more than 50% of the team.
No, it doesn't. No
I
way.
think
Changing one person isn't a blow up.
A twist is one. Blow it up is two
twist
or
is
more.
one or two, bro.
Bro,
Twist is
two
one
or
two.
more is a massive change, bro. Two is a massive change in a team.
That's a twist. That's a good twist.
No, that's a blow it up.
That's
a big
Mark,
twist.
Blow
It's
it
a
up.
huge twist.
Blow it up is like you drop everybody or keep one guy. That's a blow it up. Twist
Whatever.
is you keep the foundation,
All right,
but
fine.
like interchange
Twist.
some parts. Okay, that's
The
better.
thing is, Chris, right? You've got to keep it in mind. Like Pat is one of the founding creators of the blow up phrase, so he,
Very true.
deserves to create the definition.
Has
of it,
also
in my
a
opinion.
Toronto Ultra stan. He couldn't fathom blowing up his 2025.
I just wouldn't blow up the team that all they need is a little twist.
Yeah, well, let's hear it then, Pat. What you think?
I would. First person gone for me is Insight. I
For who?
don't.
Be realistic.
I will.
No, I'm kidding,
I will.
I'm trolling.
Ghosty, aBeZy.
Actually-
Those are my 1 and 2s. Ghosty or aBeZy. Great AR replacements for Insight. I don't think I'd take Skies for Insight if I could get him. I would rather have Ghosty or aBeZy. And then the next one is Envoy, and I don't even know if we need to twist Envoy off the roster. I think Envoy just had a rough year. But for me, Insight has been a little too lackluster now for a couple years. He was insane this year at Major 1. Like, it was the best he's probably ever played in his career. But we didn't see that once the rest of the year. So yeah, I'm twisting Insight around. I'm finding a better AR. And then I'm evaluating Envoy, but I don't think there's someone else that I could get that's better than Envoy. And so I'm going to give Envoy the benefit of the doubt in Black Ops 6. But I am twisting.
You lot are not going to like my answer. I'm sticking.
God.
I'm sticking with the squad.
What?
I'm sticking. Listen. This is just
Your
my own
European
experience.
cheese.
Yeah, this
European
is Insight
cheese, you
European
can-
cheese.
Insight, European, friendship, cheese, whatever you want to call it. That's fine. But I know what Insight brings to the table in a leadership aspect. I think you lose a lot of that with like a player like aBeZy. Maybe Ghosty. I think I can, get on board more with that. But I think aBeZy for Insight, in my opinion, doesn't work. I think Ghosty would be the only valid potential option. But is that going to be possible? I don't know. Is LA Thieves going to let their star player go? Probably not. They've just rebuilt around him. So, in my opinion, that's just not going to happen. I think that they should stick. Because outside of Ghosty, I think there's really no valid replacements. So that's kind of my logic there. What's your thoughts? I disagree, I guess. You're assuming that I'm absolutely faded European cheese.
I just think, how confident are you in Insight? That's what this comes down to. I don't think I'm as confident as him as you, especially like seeing how inconsistent he is and seeing like how often he doesn't play at his peak. Like his peak, Major 1, I think if Insight could play like that every tournament, they would win multiple tournaments in the year. But he's just not consistent enough for me, and I think this team needs a consistent main AR.
Yeah.
Especially because we know Kleenex is inconsistent.
Yeah. I get behind the logic. I just don't think that it's... I think we're obviously looking at it from a purely, individual performance perspective, and I think that the individual performance of other players on the team could potentially get worse without Insight. That is my logic behind it. I know what he brings to the table. Don't get me wrong, I do agree he can definitely play at a higher level, and if he continues playing this way, it could be a discussion, but in my opinion, it's hard.
So who do you think on the team is making Insight play worse?
No, I'm saying I think he makes the rest of them play better.
Oh, he makes them play better. Okay.
Yeah, with what he brings to the table in terms of leadership.
I want to say
all these
I want to
aspects.
say that's a possibility, but until he's off the roster and they play with somebody that is not him, we don't know if that's true. Because for all we know, it's not like Scrap's going to go back to dropping 0.9s if Insight's not on the team. He's very well probably still going to be frying. So, hey, intangibles are great. Listen, I was a big preacher of intangibles, for a long time in my career, but we're at a point where intangibles only can do so much when you have people like Simp, aBeZy, Shotzzy, Pred, fucking all these guys, Dashy, all these guys just shooting fucking nuclear missiles with you while also doing all the little things right. So, hey, it is what it is.
Right, let's move on to Seattle then. What are you thinking?
Twist.
Where are we making improvements there?
Problem, I think Mark, the problem is I think
gotta be
Abuza's gonna get pulled, right? Like Abuza's not staying on this team. He's a complete free agent. I think he's automatically gone. Like I think another team is gonna poach him. And so then they're only gonna have 3. And I'm not confident in the 3 they have. So yeah, actually, Mark, I might blow it up.
If it's blow it up territory, if in a hypothetical world where aBeZy's gone and it's blow it up territory, like I think we keep 0-4 and everyone else is replaceable. But if aBeZy stays, it's probably just a twist. I wouldn't mind seeing Hook or Brezzy potentially improve for and just mix up the roster. I do like that they improved a lot as a team, but like just from like a winning perspective, I just feel like 0-4 and aBeZy have a lot of potential as players. Brezzy's been up and down, and listen, I get Hook is storied and he's very aggressive and he's pretty good at what he does, but I just still think like to a degree his playstyle is just a liability. And like he's not been that player for a long time. Like now it's just like he's mindless aggression, and to a degree it kind of works, but his effectiveness isn't even relatively close to the effectiveness of a player like aBeZy or even Joedeceives who's developing, Shotzzy, or any of those SMGs that are at the top of the food chain.
My take on the whole Kyler thing is that I believe that he is good enough to be able to get you wins and beat top competition. But in terms of consistency, I think that's where it's like, you need that consistency to be able to win championships. And I think we all know he likes to play in a very aggressive, green light style. He likes to do what he wants, and sometimes that can be hard to play with and deliver consistent results. So, yeah, I'm kind of in the blow up territory myself, to be honest. I think 0-4 was a great player throughout this season when he came on board with the squad. I think he brings a lot to the squad outside of the game as well. Just seeing how he kind of acts around, behind the scenes as well. I think he's a very good guy to have around for the squad. I like Brezzy as well, and I think Brezzy and Hugh is a good balanced SMG duo. So I think that they two together are a very good balance. But again, it depends on the goals of the organisation, because I think ultimately, is Vancouver going to be an organisation that contends for championships? Maybe not. And if that's the case, this is probably their highest chance of, potentially securing top 4 placements with this squad. So, in that aspect, maybe you keep it with the twist and aBeZy's gone and they just stick the other 3 together and try and keep some continuity.
Well, I think what they need to do, first off, is blow up this name change. Vancouver Surge does not roll off the tongue, Mark.
No, it doesn't. Definitely doesn't. All right. What team should we move on to now, guys? What's the next squad?
New York,
thinking?
Cloud9, whatever we're calling them.
Shit. Forgot the big dogs. My bad. Cloud9, what are we thinking?
This is a twist. I'm getting rid of Skies and Kismet.
Who are you going to get that's better than Kismet? That is available. Let's be realistic here.
Kleenex or Envoy or Gwyn.
That's available.
That's potentially available.
Gwyn might be the only one.
We already said we're twisting the other teams.
See, he's doing this shit again. Listen, Kismet had one bad year. I think we twist it, but I don't think it's Kiz. I think it's just maybe a potential for Skies. I think they could easily find an AR, especially if more teams do make changes that they could potentially change. Kismet subs are just hard to come by unless they can get somebody like a Kleenex, Envoy, or any of the other top subs. It's probably not even worth replacing. He had a great year in Vanguard when he came into New York and turned that team around and helped them get the champs. He came in MW2 and he was 99 Kiz. This year, he turned it around towards the end and started, playing a little bit better, but still not the greatest. And then, he played okay at this tournament, but he just had a bad year, man. I'm hoping he bounces back in the next one, because I think, at least from what it shows in MW2, he was a great player.
Yeah, I'm twisting for sure. I think Sky's probably for me. I would be the player. Apart from that, I think Kismet's a really good asset and works really well with Hydra. I think he covers a lot of gaps, allows Hydra to do what he wants on the map, and just pushes him to play as aggressive as possible. His communication and intangibles are immaculate. So I think that for me, they're a really balanced SMG duo. I think I wasn't really a bigger fan of the Skies Sib duo, even though Sib obviously performed at an incredible level towards the end of the season. For me, I think that would be the area of improvement potentially. And that's where we can maybe see, an insight floating in there. That's if we're talking insight's gone, that could be maybe.
I don't know, Mark. Are we
are
we dropping skies to pick up insight? I don't know if we're doing that.
I don't know.
No idea.
I don't know.
I'd rather have Ghosty
Insight
or
friendship cheese. No, I'm kidding.
Wait, but we can't put Ghosty on every squad though. I mean, obviously we could whack Ghosty in there too.
It's got to be one though.
All right, Ghosty's in there then. All right, we're whacking Ghosty in there. Let's move on to Carolina Royal Ravens. What are you thinking?
I'm twisting, bro. I've been trying to twist this squad around for years. I guess a year. I'm twisting it. I mean, they did half of it. I think getting rid of Clay was the right move. I think they still got to get rid of Fellow. I don't know if you guys disagree with that, but I still feel like he's holding the squad back.
I think Fellow brings a lot of intangibles, which helps. But
I'm
also
so tired of intangibles.
But on LAN, he's been like a top 10. Wait, this is actually a thing. He's actually been like a top 10 LAN KD for like this entire year.
I feel like that's impossible. Someone needs to stat check.
It's got to be close. He's up
Can
there.
someone stat check this, please? Because I feel like this is outrageously incorrect.
It's close. I'm not even lying. He's actually had good LAN stats.
You're telling me that
year.
Fellow on LAN is one of the 10 best
now I kinda
CDL players out of 48?
I kind of want to look. He tweeted it. So maybe he's gassing himself a bit, but I mean, if he
is he photoshopping the stats?
If he tweeted that and like obviously wasn't even close, he'd probably get roasted for it. But but is
it like one game mode? Like he's the top 10 control KD?
No, like
or
overall. I do. It is a fact though that Tyler actually has good LAN stats. Like no bullshit, he has good LAN stats.
Well, why the fuck does he have a 0.5 online, making them starting losers online stage?
That's inexcusable. But I'm just saying he's good on LAN, and he did improve a bit online when he moved. And they got to the Carolina facility, so that obviously helped them. They were playing spread for like majority of the season. I think maybe the last one or two events he was playing from North Carolina. Could be wrong. But he plays good on LAN.
Where are the stats at, Chris? Show me the stats.
I'm not going to go look for them, but it's got to be close.
Mark.
He's not going to tweet it. If he tweets it out and lies, he'll get called out for it. I could be wrong. But he tweeted out that he's got top 10 LAN stats or close. So if I believe him, and it's true, I like I said, I think LAN Fellow is better. I would say Stick just because I like the way they played with Beans. And it was a very limited time. If Gwyn gets poached, they're fucked, which he probably will. But I do like the trajectory that this team was going in. They ended up going last map with Surge. They played pretty well at this tournament. They could have played better. They were pretty good, formidable LAN team for the majority of the year. They had some pretty good LAN placements, and that was with Clay, who, again, also improved on LAN. He got dropped, but he also improved on LAN, which was weird. But... yeah, I'd say Stick and give it maybe, to the first one or two events, of the year next year and see how they do. Obviously, it's going to be a completely different game. But I do like the roster right now.
I'm scrolling. I'm already back in June. I don't see any tweet about top 10 LAN stats.
No, he just tweeted a reply. He was replying to somebody. I don't know if he deleted it.
A reply.
He was replying to somebody.
He deleted that. Oh, no. Nah, I think
cooked and he.
I think you're confusing a stat here, Chris. I swear he was like one of the top 10 most improved from online to LAN, not like the top 10 LAN KDs.
Well, that's his. Listen, I was looking at his tweet, bro. I
fair enough.
Look for it.
Wait. I found a tweet. I found
top
it. He replied to some random
major.
guy. Yeah, but look at the guy's reply next to it. He said, "Hey, taking your under paid my mortgage off. I'm not complaining." That is insane.
Yeah, that's insane. But yeah, top 10. He said that's what it was. That was a tweet. Top 10 KD every major, that's big dog. Insane. So,
is that true?
Hey, I mean, if
do they post stats like that anymore? Like, you know how they used to post them on COD comp stats or whatever? You could see every event's
Yeah, I don't. I have no idea. But you see what I'm saying. Listen, either way, he did get better on LAN. I'd say Stick. I don't really know if because these guys are at the point where they're playing for the Ravens, them finding viable options that they're going to realistically get when all the talent gets poached. Even one of their teammates might get poached. It's just looking kind of rough. at their level, like they're one fellow. Well, let's say for example, if they get rid of fellow, they're picking up another challenger player, or they're picking up somebody's worst player on a team that they get dropped off of. You see what I'm saying? So I don't really know if there'll be like a great substitute there for him that is going to play as good as him.
I will say I was sad to see this aBeZy Gwyn beef at this event. Those are my Gwyn guys. That should have been the roster, but they're beefing.
They're beefing.
I mean,
guys.
I
Can
agree
we
with
talk
both
about
your
that for a
points.
second? How good those guys would have been? Gwyn, aBeZy, Ghosty. Like, I laid that out for JCap. I said, look, sign this team, trust me, and he didn't do it. And now all these guys are first round picks in the 2025 offseason draft. I hate it. I try to help.
I agree with Chris's point on the Carolina side of things to end off their conversation. I think that there's probably limited options, so I'd probably just stick and see what happens, unless someone comes out out of nowhere that's like, you know, willing to take like a small salary and fit into that squad. But I guess we'll need to wait and see. That's a hypothetical. I don't know if that's going to be an option. Let's move on to the next team. I'm not even going to, like, is there any point in talking about LAG? Because are they even a squad anymore? Like, they've already twisted.
They're blown up.
They're blown up.
I think the only one that we should talk about is Heretics, and I think they need to blow it up. This was embarrassing out of the Heretics this week.
Yep, blow it up. Their team is just like, we got to stop with the Spanish cheese, the region cheese, these all European, all UK, all fucking Spanish, all like get it out of this fucking league, bro. Listen, we saw teams. Listen, I said it on the flank. The London Spitfire back in Overwatch was one of like the best teams at the time, way back in the day, like probably first season, if I'm remembering correctly. I could be wrong, but it was way back. They were all Asians. London, did they even have a guy from London on their team or UK? Probably not. Get it out, bro. Pick up the best players, period. I don't care what region you're from. Like, it's just get rid of this damn Spanish cheese. And if you're insisting on staying it, well, maybe there's two other people you can potentially pick up, but apparently they don't like each other. So, I don't know. Just no more region cheese, bro, please.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think that they should build the best roster possible. That's a fact. The issue is that, you know, when you start bringing other players in the community, then you're looking at nuking the whole squad, because are these other, like, say they're, you know, Real or whoever you'd want to keep in the roster, say, are they going to work as well when they aren't able to speak in their, like, you know, native language? Maybe not. I think that can be a big factor. Although I do think the majority of the Miami guys have good English. I do agree. I think blow it up, maybe keep one, maybe two players.
Real and Bickle, they're both can easily speak English. And Metals did play on a team of full English players, I think, in Challengers before, and got like second. And he also was on Ultra. Lucky was also on Ultra, but I really don't know. I think all these guys are fine playing in English.
I would probably only keep Real.
Yeah, I think Real is a good player.
I think keeping Real and maybe one more, but I don't know who out of the other three, to be honest. But again,
probably either Metals or Vickle.
Yeah. Honestly, I just
think Lucky. I think Lucky's role is just easily substitutable. Like, it's just like your AR players are always easily to substitute. Like, they're the easiest role to find. Players that can sub in that role easily, while your sub players are just way too difficult to.
Yeah. No, 100%.
Especially if we go back to, thinking next game is going to play like a more traditional game, and the maps are not going to be just fucking AR head glitch heavy like they are with the MW2 maps this year. We'll probably go back to seeing way more subs on maps. It's going to be so much more normal, like 2-2. While, like, dude, at the end of this year, like, we saw like 3-4 ARs on every map, including maps like Vista. Fucking insane.
Yeah, true. I think the remaining teams, to be honest, we kind of know the answer to this question. We could probably rattle through these real quick, but Vegas Legion, I'm, probably
blow it up.
Probably blowing that up real quick.
I'd say Twist.
Twist, who are you keeping?
I'm keeping Geo. I'm keeping Attach, where I'm keeping Geo, Attach, Nero, and just making another change. I just don't know where they would have placed with Johnny.
Do they pick Johnny back up?
Johnny just couldn't go.
Yeah.
But like when it comes to re-signing their roster, that's entirely up to Vegas. Like I think Vegas, knowing the Vegas Legion, they're probably not going to re-sign their players, and they're going to wait until like closer to like the deadline window and re-sign who's available. So they'll probably all be like, you know, free agents or whatever. I don't know how it works, but I'm pretty sure like a lot of orgs do that want to save money. It's so they don't pay them in the off season.
Yeah, which is insane. By the way, but
this is another topic of conversation that I'd like to move into, actually. Kind of ending off the whole stick and twist topic, but I think it's a good place to end on Vegas. But I did hear rumors that potentially there is a situation where they might be removing like the CDL sort of contract guarantees in terms of like salary guarantees, which means if Vegas Legion are still going down the route they have been in previous years, they could be fielding a team for pennies. So you never know what might happen, but I think that's an interesting thing to think about.
Wait, there's a rumor that the salary cap is going to get lower, like the salary minimum is going to get completely removed.
Yeah, there's a rumor that there's going to be absolutely zero salary requirements. So in theory, a team could like be like, I don't know how true this is. This has just been talk of the town.
If but that's true, that's hilarious, bro. People are like, yeah, we'll sign you to the CDL league for $1K a month.
Yeah. I don't know how legal that is, though. Like, is that even legal? Like, it could just be complete.
What do you mean, bro? We used to be signed for teams for literally $0.
No, I know, but like in a professional league sense, like
it doesn't matter. You can call anything a professional league.
Yeah, maybe.
You can call anything a league and treat it like a league. Just because the guys getting paid for 50 cents doesn't mean it's not a league. There was people in the league that were working for free this year that were coaches.
Yeah, true. Yeah, like, I just don't know. Like, coaches technically aren't like a part of the CDL though. Like, they're still going to have to sign CDL. No, but like they don't have to sign CDL contract. No, but it's different to be
like. I mean, they're showing up to events as coaches. They're getting coach passes. You would think like that shit matters. I don't know. I could be wrong, but
I know you're saying, but I think
that's fucking insane though. Thank God I'm a streamer now. Holy.
Yeah, I mean, again, this is complete. What I've just heard from behind the scenes, it could be bollocks.
$500 a month, bro. We got you. Join up.
It's an interesting topic of conversation, anyway. But yeah, outside, I've obviously got to talk about the Boston thing. We kind of brushed past it a little bit, but in terms of Boston, where do you guys see that organization going? Would you like to see a new organization buying over the spot? I'm assuming the answer to that would be yes. And if so, who would you like to see getting involved in the CDL of the kind of, bigger esports organizations?
Well, I heard that obviously those guys are trying to pull out of like esports. Yeah. So if that's true, and it's like a shadow organization where they keep the brand, but it's a completely new ownership, then I mean, I wouldn't mind. But I mean, if I could see way better organizations, especially with like Cloud9 already coming into the picture, buyouts being gone, like I'd love to see like more like tier 1 orgs like coming to the scene. Even if they're not spending fucking cash, I would just love to see orgs that at least aren't going to fucking leave the scene, invest into it.
My easy answer would be complexity, but I don't think that can work because they're Texas based and OpTic has the Texas team.
That's not, well, it is true, but it's also, isn't there like in sports, isn't there like the Texans and then like the Rangers or something like that?
Yeah,
like
but this is different because the CDL, it's the same thing with why it was the Florida Mutineers, not the Miami Mutineers. They got the whole state instead of the city. And I think it's the same thing with OpTic in Texas. They got the Texas slot, not the Dallas or not the, it was Dallas Empire, but when it changed to OpTic, I think it became OpTic Texas. So,
well, that's also not true because LA has LA and then LAG had LAG. It's all LA.
But it's different though. It's like the teams negotiated like whether they got a city or the whole state or whatever. Like that's my point.
But you're
like
also but two of them have LA. So like why couldn't
but that's what I'm saying.
That
was agreed upon. That was agreed upon prior. I'm saying like if OpTic has Texas as a whole, they're not going to give up Texas, so complexity can get.
I guess. I'm just saying, like, I mean, it's not entirely impossible.
One thing
I don't know what other orgs would come in.
Yeah, One thing I would say in that actually is that I believe that may have been like a time period based thing, because I'm fairly certain that Toronto had like the exclusivity rights for like Canada, and that's why that Vancouver have now changed to Vancouver. I could be wrong, but I'm fairly certain that is the case. So if the exclusivity deals were like the same amount of time for each franchise, then that may mean that it's freed up. But if that's not the case, then it's basically based on whatever period of time you negotiated. Maybe it's different. But again, yeah, I think there's multiple big organizations that would like to get involved. I think, you know, the organization we represented this weekend, Gentlemates, they had like a huge following this weekend in terms of Gataga was streaming a lot of our matches and all of our matches, and was getting a great viewership. And I think there's a lot of big organizations that could definitely have a positive influence on the CDL. So I think if Boston are going in that direction where they're operating more of a shell of their organization, I'd like to see them eventually sell up and you know, bring someone in that actually wants to sort of positively improve the CDL space. And I think that would be a good direction to go down, to be honest. But yeah, let's just talk about that, actually. Let's talk about my squad this weekend and the Challengers teams this weekend. I think we'll just kind of talk over Challengers, you know, briefly as a whole. Where do you sort of see the next teams players coming through next season, now that we've been able to see some of these Challengers players competing against the pro players at this event? Who kind of stood out to you guys this weekend? I know obviously the Challengers teams didn't exactly fry, but I think there was obviously a lot of positives, you know, with some of these teams actually taking out some of the pro teams.
I think the only people I'm still looking at are Dylan Rex, I'm looking at Cobra, and I'm looking at Paul X. And those are the three that I feel like stand out. Obviously the Boston guys, they were in Challengers, but like they're obviously on Boston now with like Big Wake, Cammy, those guys, but those guys are obviously good shouts too. But that's my three that I would definitely, you know, still look at. I think Paul X is still good. I think always something that's always held Paul back is his mental and his mentality. Like the way he just like, I don't know, he psychs himself out. It's weird, but he's very talented. Cobra, he's a shooter. That guy's got talent. And then, dude, I just blacked out. Who was my other one? Cobra.
Paul X and Dylan Rex.
Paul X and Dylan Rex. Yeah, Dylan Rex, he's been talked about for a lot. He was potentially getting an offer on a different team. So that guy's been, you know, he's been due as well.
I don't have three. I got one, and it's only Dylan Rex. I don't have anyone else that I think is at that point yet. I think we're still going to see a big shuffle. I was surprised the Stallion squad didn't play as well as I thought they would. You know, all those guys obviously have league experience and obviously talk a big game, like looking at like Exceed. And I wasn't as impressed by them. So yeah, I'm just gonna say only Dylan Rex.
They just haven't been as good since ASIM went to Vegas and came, or was it Vegas and then came back? Yeah, like they were like good for a while. They were good without ASIM. Then ASIM came back, they were good, and then ASIM left again to Vegas, and then when he came back again, they just started getting worse. They were still okay, but other teams started to get better. Like Lore,
are you going to say the headshot multiplier changed?
Like, could be. Yeah, that also probably didn't help them, but they were also like doing well when that was the thing at first. But yeah, I mean, there's been other teams that have won tournaments. Like O4's team won a tournament on LAN. They beat FaZe Black, and then Lore won champs and they beat ProLoot, Awakening, Purge, those guys in the finals. Like FaZe didn't even make it. So I mean, I'm not surprised that they didn't show up. I think obviously people would just hype them up because it's Tommy's squad, and if people don't actually pay attention to the challengers towards the end of the year, the best teams were pretty much Lore and what is it called? It was what were they called at the time? It was like Omit. It was like
Brooklyn,
ProLoot, Wake, Cammy, and it was the team that essentially went to Boston without ProLoot. They were the second best challenger team.
For me, I think, like, just to circle back to what Pat said, I think the Stallions deserve some props, to be honest. I think they came in and beat a Team 3-0 that, you know, qualified for champs, were one of the top, you know, best of the rest conversation in Miami throughout the
That's
rest
Talking
of
about
the season.
Miami?
I'm not commending
Miami's
that series,
ass,
bro.
Mark.
Yeah,
I'm not
but they
commending that
weren't
series.
before. They
Bro,
were.
did you watch that series? Did you watch
Yes, I
that
watched
series?
the series. I know it was very. I
That
know it was
was
very.
the worst series of Call of Duty I've ever watched in my life. It was probably as bad as the Vegas OpTic series online. Do you guys remember that one? Where like OpTic, after they won, they went to like Zuma's stream and they were just basically talking about how like check they were and like it wasn't even a real series of COD. Though that series was, those two were like the top two worst series of COD I've ever seen this year. And no team wanted to win the game. No team just had any idea what was going on. It was the weirdest series I think I've ever watched. I cannot commend that victory because those guys were playing with their feet, and so was Heretics.
I agree in that sense. It wasn't exactly great Call of Duty at the end of the day, but they still came out and took out a team that were beating the other teams that were at the bottom half of the league 3-0. So I do think that, regardless of the quality of the play, I think that it's still commendable. They still did.
Boston also beat them. No, wait, did Boston play them? No, Boston didn't. They didn't. Wait, did they?
Wait, no.
No, it didn't. No, they didn't. I forget how the groups worked. I forgot which team played which, but Miami didn't win. They lost twice. So I think they did lose to Boston. Then they lost. Yeah, they did, because Stallions played Toronto. Boston played Heretics. So, bro, they lost to two challenger teams, bro. Like, people aren't going to say it, but they lost to two challenger teams. Awakening, Cammy, and...
Oh, they're arguably a challenger team.
Like, I said that about a lot of teams. Remember we were talking about, like, oh, these teams will get upset, blah, blah. Some people were saying, oh, no pro team's going to lose to an amateur team. Bro, these teams are all, like, all these bottom tier teams are, like, all challenger teams. Like, they were players that were in challengers last year. They just got in the league this year, but they've been screaming pro competition, so everyone gave them the edge. But at the end of the day, bro, these are players that these teams have played against and beat multiple times, like last year in their online or in their LAN events. Like, it made sense that they would get that. There would be teams that would get upset. Did I think Heretics was going to essentially lose to two challenger teams? Probably not, but I expected some teams to lose to an amateur team at some point.
Yeah. And like, to talk about my kind of performance, I think results wise, I mean, we obviously lost to New York twice. So ultimately, going into the tournament, beating Minnesota, for me at least, was my minimum expectation. Obviously, it would have been great to go further. Ultimately, we were the worst hardpoint team in the world. I mean, our control, we went 2-1. We beat New York 3-1 in Karachi. We looked good on controls. We looked good on S&D, but ultimately we went to boot camp for a couple of weeks and we couldn't get our hardpoint up to scratch, which was our biggest issue. And if we had been able to do that, maybe we could have caused an upset. But again, that still would have been difficult to do, having to beat New York. I do think that we would have beaten Minnesota a lot more convincingly if our hardpoint was better. In my opinion, it was quite embarrassing the way we lost both the hardpoints to them. But ultimately, we obviously, were good enough on control and S&D to see that series through. But kind of where my minimum expectations were for the team, we kind of met those. So I'm kind of like content with it, I guess. But obviously would have liked to do better. But again, I think that our team was, had a lot of issues in hardpoint. And we were getting, just to give you a bit of context, we were getting absolutely smoked in scrims and hardpoint for 2 weeks straight. We honestly probably could have just stayed in Europe to not scrim for 3 weeks and just won S&Ds and probably got the same result. So, not ideal. Definitely our team was not... I think, to be honest, being in EU Challengers was the biggest hurdle for us, because throughout the entire season, we've just been smoking on hardpoint for the most part. So it's hard to improve when you're...
bad tendencies.
Yeah, you're getting bad tendencies. And then we're coming in and we're playing LAT in our first day of scrims and we're like, holy shit, this is like a whole new world. Like, it was generally, we also probably tried to change a little too much going into the event. Like, we came in, we weren't performing very well in practice, and we did try and change a lot up, but it might have just been due to being, a bit rusty on the sticks, to be honest. But who knows? We couldn't figure it out. We tried multiple different things. We were struggling in multiple different areas. I know there was a lot of criticism on the timeline about not going near the hill. I don't think that was our only issue, to be honest. Even when we were on the hill, we were just instantly getting 4-deaded. We were getting streaks every game and it didn't matter. Like, there was just so many issues going on in the hardpoints themselves. But ultimately it's past now, so there's no point in even banging on about it. But again, content with what happened, and I think that it was obviously a positive, the Gentlemates inclusion in the competition, because they brought a lot of value to the competition itself, and the French viewership was going crazy. The French fans were loving it. Kataga and all them were killing it. So I think that kind of ends our discussion on the season, really. And let's go into Black Ops 6 a little bit before we talk about this. What do you think is going to change up there next year with the new kind of movement style and things like that? Who can you see doing well? Do you think will struggle?
I kind of think even with the roster changes, I think the top four is going to make. I'm afraid that this BO6 game is going to be more of a gap between the top four and everyone else. To me, it looks like this game's going to require a bit more skill. The skill gap's going to be a little higher. And so I'm afraid that that's also going to increase the gap between the top four and everyone else. On top of the fact that I think the top four teams are going to improve, right outside of OpTic and FaZe, I think the other two are going to look at roster changes to improve. And it's also going to be poaching talent from the 5th, 6th, the better challenge or better bottom 8 teams. So, yeah, I'm kind of worried that the top four gap is gonna grow even larger.
I don't know if that's going to be true. I like games like this and that are just take a little bit more individual skill to be good at, because it means that players can't just get away with like being ahead of the curve on teamwork. They still have to execute a lot more. And I feel like with how low skilled this game was in terms of like the way the maps played, like people say, oh, this game took more skill than the last game. To a degree, when it came to mechanics, slide canceling, all that stuff, yeah, sure, true. But in terms of the maps and the way they played, brother, these maps took negative skill. Like holding a setup for some of these hills literally was like, didn't even take effort because of how fucking easy the MCW was to use, how many head glitches there were.
But doesn't that go with what I'm saying? Like, we already think the top four players are the best players. So if the game is going to take more individual skill,
no. But what I'm saying is like, if like a team was actually, because the top four teams, not only were they better players, but they just had good teamwork. They just would. They were better. They would get ahead of the game, and the games were like unwinnable for like the other teams. Where now it's like a better team, right? All these like the top of the line pro teams could still get ahead of the game, but like there potentially is more room to make up for if like a player that's individually talented is not on a good team. They can still make up ground because the maps are like. The maps could potentially be less punishable. Like if that's what it's hard to explain for me what I'm trying to say.
But it may less punishable maybe, but it's still going to be a harder skill gap to learn to be the best at it. Like
no, I wouldn't say so. Like for example, like
bro, a lot of you just made the argument that these maps were so straightforward that like anyone could be good at holding a heady or holding a lane. Like if that's not necessarily the case,
in terms of the raw gameplay mechanic, yes, but in terms of the teamwork aspect. It was way harder.
But the top four are already better in both cases.
Yes, but to a degree, there's a ceiling as to which you can reach in terms of skill, like in these types of games. Like at the end of the day, we play a game with aim assist.
I disagree with that because Cold War was the same way, and Atlanta FaZe mastered it, and we saw how good they were at that game. I feel like it's going to be the same conversation.
That game did not take a lot of mechanical skill.
It took both mechanical and knowing the game.
That game was super structured and way more teamwork oriented than the rest of the games. Like,
but just because there's adding a new dive mechanic doesn't mean this Black Ops game isn't going to be the same.
FaZe wasn't good at Cold War because they would just gun you. FaZe was good at Cold War because they would put you in the super mega ultra mega team shot spawn trap hell.
What's going to happen in Black Ops 6? The top four is going to do that to everybody else in Black Ops 6.
I mean, not necessarily. Games. Mark,
this guy's arguing against his point by stating things for my point. I don't understand.
Games that often have like a lot of movement mechanics and a lot of like it's really individually skill oriented, mechanic oriented are often the most competitive games because there's a lot of players that are on teams that might not have the best teamwork, but can shoot back and play like individually well. Look at games like
Treyarch.
Look at games like BO4.
Punish bad plays.
Look at games like BO4.
BO4 was the only one, and it was 5v5 stim cheese.
But still, with the
not
amount
a
of
good
movement
comparison.
Mechanics in these games, the Omni movement, the diving while shooting, the slide canceling.
I don't think that's going to change whether the top
how fast this game's going to play. I'm looking at it from a perspective of where the game. You're looking at the game as if it's going to play like Cold War. I'm looking at the game like it's going to play like BO4. It's probably a mixture. So we
It's
could
still
both
4v4 though.
we could both be right. It doesn't matter.
The
about
only
BO4.
reason
My point that I'm
BO4 was
trying to-
so mixy and crazy was because of 5v5 and stim.
Yeah, but my point that I'm trying to make is in a game that takes a lot more individual talent over teamwork, these teams have a better chance just because, again...
How? They're already outnumbered in talent. That's the problem with the top four now.
Because the amount of teamwork that you can achieve in a game like COD is substantially higher.
You're telling me
than
some random
talent.
challenger team, now that it won't take as much teamwork, is going to be able to turn on aBeZy.
Bro, in BO4, I almost beat E United when they picked up Simp with Gorgo Knight, Lacefield Blast, myself, and Llama God.
Yeah, they had JCap and Clay. Like that's
no,
not
they
that
didn't.
crazy.
That was when they had aBeZy and they had fucking
JCap
Simp.
was on that squad.
No, not when I played them.
Or Clay was. Bro,
they
either
won
way,
champs. My point is that in a game
that's
where individual
5v5 stem cheese where there was
it
ults.
doesn't matter.
Ults can change the game.
My point is in a game where there's way more individual talent, like you can get away with having less teamwork and compensating for it with individual talent.
If there's more talent, then Pred and aBeZy are just going to have these guys in the death cam the whole time.
You cannot compensate for talent or for teamwork with individual talent, but you can do it on the other way. It's a fact.
but that's also true for the more talented team.
But the thing is, though, it's like you think those guys are just super talented because they're on their teams with that.
No. I also think aBeZy is better than everyone else not in the top four.
Bro, for example,
I think the same is true for Simp, Cellium, Drazah, Pred, Dashy, Shotzzy, Kenny, all of them. They're all individually better.
Let's put this in a current perspective. We just watched the finals of Thieves and what's it called, FaZe. Did you not see maps where Joedeceives was literally absolutely frying like aBeZy and those guys?
That's 11 months into this game. Okay, like who cares?
Yeah,
at
that's
that
fine.
point?
But I'm saying like to say that like those, for example, if Joe was on a FaZe for like aBeZy, do I think they would be the same team? No, but Joe could eventually easily get to a point of aBeZy in terms of talent and what you would.
I think in the start. Yo, Mark, this guy just said Joedeceives could be as good as aBeZy. Listen,
Joe's 19. We don't know that.
Listen,
not true.
What I can say is I think aBeZy will have Joedeceives on skates in the first few months of Black Ops 6.
Yeah, because
will have him on skates.
Because that's how those teams operate. They get ahead of the curve because they are just that.
Yeah,
much,
but that's the thing. They get ahead of the curve, and then they're also better players. So it's a double whammy.
I'm not saying that what you're saying is not completely true, but to say that these teams are going to just get even further away better is probably not true. I think it's either going to stay the same or it'll get closer.
I think they're going to run them, bro.
I think, to be honest, I do more agree with Pat, but I think also that's based on the hypothetical, what we've seen on the game so far. It might not play out exactly the way we're thinking, but I do think from what I've seen so far, I would agree on Pat's side that there is going to be more of a gap like we've seen during the Cold War season. But again, time will tell. I think we need to move on to community questions and like get that started now. So let's move into a question from Chandler Host Sapien, who asks, do you think Simp really needs to win without aBeZy to be considered the GOAT?
Not necessarily, but I think he needs to win a lot fucking more.
Bro, Scump was barely winning before Kremp. And people can.
He wasn't winning. He won one event.
Win? Okay, he won one event. Okay, yeah. Even then, Scump wasn't winning without Kremp like consistently.
No, he won two. He won two. He won X Games and Ghost, and then he won.
And I'm not throwing shots out at Scump for those of you guys watching at home. I'm more so saying people want to say he's the GOAT. People will argue he's the GOAT over Kremp sometimes. He wasn't winning a lot without 4Boy and Kremp and those guys in Karma and all that shit. So, like, if you want to make that argument for Simp, then you can only make that argument for those guys too. It's a double, So
I don't think who Simp wins with matters. I think the fact that his win percentage is so low is what matters. I think Simp's already set himself up to have a really hard argument for GOAT, just because he has such a poor record in the finals. Like, he's so insane at average placing and getting there, but he can't get the job done enough. And his win percentages finals are terrible. And like when I mean, we know like there's no world where Simp is ever going to have 40 event wins or whatever Kremp has. And so it's like, even if he gets to, let's say 20, like the comparison, he's already fighting a losing battle. I think like he's going to have a different accolade, but I don't think he'll be able to win.
He needs to, if he wants to be GOAT in the GOAT conversation, he needs to start winning like convincingly. Not convincingly, but he needs to start winning multiple events in like rapid succession. Like it's going to get to a point where like, yes, his wins in the grand scheme of things, they're worth a lot more nowadays than wins back then were because of like prize money and like hypothetical.
I think he'll get like most successful, but I don't think he'll get greatest.
The greatest of all time will probably be Kremp, and it probably will never be top. But in terms of like raw success, it'll probably be him just because of the amount of prize money that's invested nowadays. Obviously people argue this ceiling thing when it comes to like competition, and yeah, it is true, but in reality, as much as we want to talk about it, it's harder to win now than it was then, and you can't argue that just because of in terms of like,
I still disagree with that.
In terms of not in terms
you
of
win
like
2 matches and you're in the final.
That's what I was going to say.
Hard to do.
So in terms of like tournament longevity and like those types of factors, it was harder then. But in terms of like how more prepared your competition is nowadays and how much better it is,
that can be countered by saying the games are easier, because I don't like the games are not as complex as they used to be. We had this conversation the other day, like in Black Ops 2, there was a full like meta game happening nonstop in the game. Nowadays, everyone runs the same class.
You couldn't really
everyone
prepare
runs
for
the
that.
same thing. Like, yeah, you may prepare more in terms of like watching VODs, but you don't have to actively be making as many decisions as you had to then.
I mean, yeah, you can argue it. There's a lot of ways. I think you can argue it multiple ways, but at the end of the day, I lean a little bit more on the side that it's harder to win nowadays in terms of competition, but it's only by a little bit. It's not by a lot. And it's just me. The thing that mainly drives it for me is the amount of resources people have now to reach peaks. While back then, like the amount of peak was not only like limited to like the competition you had at the time, but like the resources everyone had. Nowadays, like you have like no excuse to like not be the best with the amount of like time, resources and stuff. So like that's the only reason I slightly lean towards that direction. So yeah, but still, he'll definitely be the most successful in terms of like raw winnings, accomplishments and stuff for sure. But in terms of like GOAT status, it won't be beat by anybody but Kremp. That guy has like, what's his percentage for like not only winning finals, but just the amount of tournaments he was in the finals of? Like, I feel like it was like 70% of the tournaments
it's that high.
Was it like in terms of how many finals he's been in terms of the tournaments he's performed in? Not in terms of wins. It was high. It was like 60.
40.
Really?
40 or 50.
No, it's over. It's way over 50. I'm pretty sure it's over 50.
I think finals
I saw a tweet soon. Let me find it. What's this guy's Twitter? I forget his name. It's like something stats.
No, it's impossible to be that, bro, because he's only has 38 wins and he's been to like 80 events. So how would he have
Brian stats?
But think about it, Chris. If he only has 38 wins and he's went to over 80 events, he's already below 50.
Right. You might be right, but I just remember the tweet that he posted and it was kind of insane.
I think it was finals,
see what it was.
to be honest, or top threes or something along those lines, to be honest. It would be something like that. That would make a bit more sense, to be honest. Like getting to the finals or like winning grand finals or something along those lines would be quite high. But yeah, like you said, he's definitely been to quite a lot of events.
Okay, I found it. 38-time champ, 3-time world champ, most finals, top 3 and top 4 placements in COD history, most consecutive tournament wins in a row, won a championship in 8 different CODs, a member of the first 2 COD dynasties. What's this card say? So average placing 3.8, finals appearances 51 out of 89 events. So he's gone to the finals over half of the tournaments he's been to. And out of the finals that he's played in, he's won again over like far beyond over half. He's been in 51 finals, has won 38 of them. So, okay, so I was definitely wrong.
His percentage is not that great. Mine's like 75. What's his percentage?
Finals appearances, 38 out of 51.
Yeah, what's his percentage, Mark? Mine a little bit better in the finals. You asked, Kremp.
Yeah, that's because you stopped making finals, son.
What? I still dominated every time. Anytime I'm on a Sunday grand finals, you out of 3 out of 4 times, you know I'm winning it. Think about that, Chris.
That's crazy.
But no, I think yeah, the problem with Simp is like he just has to improve that finals percentage. Like he gets there all the time, but he doesn't win enough, and that's the problem.
I think, yeah, especially with you want what's crazy. So that's like probably the easiest comparable metric when it comes to like our eras and those eras is like the finals like win percentage, because like everything else is so hard to compare because they don't have as many events anymore. Obviously the scale of the competition, you can argue it either way, but at the end of the day, you can compare that grand finals every way, which way. Like if he might not be as many events, but he's still getting to those finals. He might not be as events. If he's not closing them, like
that's what's holding him back. Right
it's going to hold him back forever.
Like he only has, I think, 10 event wins. I think this was his 10th win.
Out of how many finals?
Think about that. They have Simp has literally dominated COD for the last 5 years, and he's only won 10 events.
How many finals has he been to?
Probably over 20. Probably 20, 25.
Yeah, so it's being hurt quite a bit. That's honestly, now that I think about it, like finals like metrics are probably going to be the like comparable stat that you'll be able to compare eras to.
Yeah, 100%. Massive. I want to just give a massive shout out to Chandler for the great question, but I think that's going to be it for us for the season, guys. And I want to give a shout out to everyone who's been viewing the show throughout the year. It's been great, especially for myself. My first year, hopefully, could continue next year as well. But it's been a pleasure chatting with you guys and Doug, obviously, throughout this entire season. I've enjoyed every moment of it. Obviously, been a lot of late nights, but regardless, it's been a pleasure, and I want to thank you two, as well as Doug, for making it such a joy, as well as all the people behind the scenes at Decerto. But guys, that's it from us. I just want to make sure you guys remember, though, make sure you subscribe to the channel, and also comment below if you want to see any like off-season content from us. Who knows? We've got nothing planned, but you never know. If there's enough interest in there, they might make something happen. But let everyone know what your opinions of us are and what you kind of want to see from us next season. And yeah, just a reminder once again, make sure you subscribe to the channel, and we'll see you all later, guys. Have a good night.